you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes?
Benjamin in Tel Aviv, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay, can you hear me okay? There's a little bit of echo on my side.
Yeah, sorry about the echo. Just make sure you got your stream turned off and ask your question or say what you're going to say, and we'll move on.
Oh, okay. A couple of weeks ago, you had a discussion with a gentleman, by his accent, I think he was from India, maybe. The caller that came in right after him made some sort of racial slur that was really disgusting. Anyway,
Yes.
He was talking about higher states of consciousness and trying to lead you about, now that you're atheist and rational, you can go further. Something like that. And I don't know
I
if
can
you
level
recall
up.
the conversation.
He said I could level up to the next level.
Yeah, that was it, and that threw me off because there's an aspect of subjectivity that's important in all our lives, and that even though we can't share experiences, we need to be able to talk about them rationally outside of any religion or any belief system, and it's something that oftentimes when talking to my atheist friends, we tend to overlook. And let me tell you what it is, what I think it is. There are so many experiences that I cannot share with you that are nevertheless important to understand each other. Take the most basic one of them, pain. You cannot experience my pain. This is not like saying, oh, you don't see the same red that I see. This is literally, my pain can only be mine, but nevertheless, if we are going to create a better society, we need to be able to talk about individual pain in a way that makes sense to both you and I.
I'd say it's exactly like your red and my red, but I agree. I agree that I can't experience your pain, but that doesn't stop us from talking about it.
Right, but how do you bring it to a level of rational discussion where we try to make for a better society? And it's an honest to God naive, wrong expression. It's an honest question, and it's completely naive. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere with that.
I don't see what the difficulty is.
I'm not aware what the problem is that we're trying to overcome.
I mean, because
somebody who takes a hard line, anything that is not absolutely objectively provable is not worth talking about. That would be a problem, but I'm not aware of huge numbers of these people causing trouble.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The exact quality of the experience of your pain is kind of irrelevant as long as we are in agreement that we're similar beings and we have similar experiences, and one of those things is pain. And by the way, we can hook you up to an EEG and see what's going on in your brain when you experience pain. We're learning a lot more about that, but I don't see that having anything. I have a sufficient understanding of what it's like to be a human being and experience things that I don't need to know exactly what it's like to be Benjamin and experience things.
No, probably not. But speaking about pain, I on purpose I use the simplest example. When you move to the other end of the spectrum, to well-being, to happiness, then what constitutes individual happiness becomes blurrier, and what constitutes a just society, a better society, becomes a much more difficult subject of discussion. And I guess half the point is that I have conversations with deeply religious people, right? And that's where we get stuck. Okay, so they can empathize and they can understand my pain or anybody's pain, but having a discussion about what is the way to lead society forward, how to get there, how to have that conversation is very, very difficult, because I come from a place where I don't accept magical thinking, and they start from a place where all they accept is magical thinking. So you can see where the horrible side of the spectrum is easy to talk about, but the nicer parts, where to lead society, what to work for, becomes more of a problem.
So your point is that even though we each experience pain individually, there's a lot of consistency as to what causes that pain. Things that cause pain to one person will tend to cause pain to another person, whereas things that cause happiness to one person are not necessarily the same as things that cause happiness to another, right? That's the point you're making?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I get that.
And thanks for making it for me.
So one of the things is when we're
Just want to make sure I understand.
When we're talking about, essentially you're talking about addressing the issues surrounding morality, particularly the things that aren't blatantly obvious to everybody.
That's right.
One of the things that we have to do is, first of all, we speak in generalities. We do this for both moral well-being, and we do it for health as well. I mean, it's one thing to say peanuts are good for you when there are people who are allergic to it. So obviously there's going to be exceptions, and we're just talking about general rules. But there are things that are pretty obvious, or should be, and the longer we spend arguing over these things that should be pretty obvious, the longer it's going to take us to address the things that are much more difficult. I think morality as a whole is a lot simpler than some people have made it out to be. They want to spend hours talking about MacGuffins of free will and subjectivity and moral relativism and all this other stuff, or having to have some external moral authority. I don't think that those conversations are actually very productive when it would seem rather obvious that when we talk about issues of rights, for example, and what rights we're going to grant people and how we're going to go about denying those rights, there's some really difficult things to talk about, and there's some more difficult things coming in the future. What about subjects related to cloning and who owns your DNA and all of these other things about identity? And there's a wealth of moral quandaries coming down the pipe, and yet we are still stuck battling over things that I would think should be much simpler about how we just generally should treat each other in that sense. You're looking for something that I don't have a solution for you other than reason, empathy being the driving forces for how we treat each other.
I wasn't so much looking for a solution as for an intelligent comment from you guys. There obviously isn't.
That's hard to
well,
get.
let me take a stab at it. It seems to me if I think you're right in your observation that that which causes pain to people tends to be relatively consistent, and that which causes happiness to people tends to be much more individualistic. But I think the answer then, if you're looking for universal approaches to happiness, is you just take a step back from the specifics and try to approach the subject from, well, on the broader view, what sorts of things can we do in a society to enable individuals to each seek out and achieve those things which cause them happiness?
I see what you're saying. Let me throw one last thing out and see what you guys make of it. Okay. Have you tried in conversation, is this something that's been useful to use the veil of ignorance argument as a way to break through pre-established, preconditions of thought and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. And just the other week, actually. For those who aren't familiar, the idea of the veil of ignorance would be if you're going to set up a series of rules for the society that you're going to live in without knowing what your position in that society is going to be. It relates to this idea of, if you're going to divide a cake up amongst a bunch of people, you have one person cut the cake, and that's the person who picks their piece last, and that encourages them to divide it as evenly as possible. And so the veil of ignorance accomplishes pretty much the same thing. If I don't know if I'm going to be born into a society that is where I'm, this skin color or this economic group, or whether or not we even have economic groups, depending on at what resolution you want to talk about society. But if I don't know exactly who I'm going to be coming into the society and I set up rules, it's more likely that I'm going to set up rules that are as fair and equitable to everyone as possible. And there's always going to be conflicts. There's no easy solution. But yeah, that is one of the driving forces determining how I make my decisions. Another one goes along the lines of what would the world be like if everybody did this thing that I'm doing or thinking about doing? Would the world be generally better or worse off or neither?
Quoting Immanuel Kant always works. I like him. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks for calling, Benjamin.
Right.
Sure.
That was neat.
Yeah.
Highfalutin.